Hello, everyone. I am sorry for the delay. I'm Professor Rel Dowdell. I'm Director of Film Studies at the Venerable Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. And I have to tell you, it'll be worth the wait because I am really honored to talk about and discuss in depth with a real luminary, Ms. Ruth E. Carter. Um, Her resume is peerless. Her consciousness to her craft is also peerless. But before I go into the program and all of its intricacies, um, if you don't mind, we're going to play a short reel of some of her resplendent work that I'm sure many of you have seen these films before, but just bear with this. I'm not sure if the sound's working with the clip or not, but either way, just visually encapsulate her work here. And after the clip plays, I'll go into the program. But if you don't mind, Ashley, would you mind playing that outstanding clip of Miss Carter's? Yes, if you can hear me, this is Do the Right Thing. That's a classic Spike Lee film, 1989. Spike Lee's sister there is Hailee, the late great Bill Nunn, an outstanding ensemble film, Danny Aiello, the late Danny Aiello, Malcolm X, 1992, classic beyond words, Denzel Washington's, or one of his magnum opuses, if I might add that in there. Angela Bassett, Greatest Goes Without School Days, a classic HBCU film, 1988. Babs Halle Berry, the late Nellie DeSalle, she passed recently. Mo Better Blues, Spike Lee's 1990. Amistad, and I'm sure, if I'm correct, Debbie Allen helped produce that film. Morgan Freeman, Anthony Hopkins, John, he is a really great actor as well. No question about it. Crooklyn, Black Dynamite, Michael Jai White, Arsenio Hall. Oh my God, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. That was a really great throwback blaxploitation film. Sparkle, the late great Whitney Houston. Yellowstone, that is a masterful show that comes on. If you haven't seen it, gotta check it out. The Butler, Lee Daniels, great film with one of the greatest ensemble casts I've ever seen. Selma, Ava DuVernay's outstanding film. Such many moving scenes that are just indelible, to say the very least. Roots, the remake, Will Packer produced. Outstanding homage to the original. Oh my gosh, the late great Chadwick Boseman as Thurgood Marshall, Josh Gad. Yeah, that was a fine film. Underrated. Dolomite Is My Name was a great film. Craig Brewer, one of Eddie Murphy's greatest performances on film, to say the least. Wesley Snipes, supporting role. The Second Coming to America, which has some of the greatest costume design you're ever going to see in any film, as all of Miss Carter's work is, unequivocally, without a doubt. Oh, goes without saying, this is where those two greatly earned Oscars came in, Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, which made Miss Carter the only African-American female in Oscar history to win two Oscars in any category. Late, great Chadwick Boseman, Angela Bassett, Oscar-nominated role. Winston Duke, fine actor. Letitia Wright, great actress. Everybody in that film personified brilliance. And hey, Samuel Jackson, that's the truth, Ruth, as he says in that great clip. Two-time Academy Award winner, history maker in every sense of the word, Miss Ruth Carter. Miss Carter, I hope we can hear you on here.
I can hear you.
How you doing today, Miss Carter?
I'm great. How are you?
It is a great honor to have you on here. When I take an honor, this is an honor beyond measure for me in every sense of the word.
Oh, thanks. That's so nice of you to say.
You
Hey,
represent
how
consciousness.
you doing?
Yeah, and you know what? Before I get into my program, Ms. Carter, I just want my esteemed president of Hampton University, President Darrell K. Williams, is also a 3-star general. He wants to say a few words to you that I just have to let him say. I'm honored to have him come on this program as well to say a few words of reverence to you. But Miss Carter, let our esteemed President Williams have this outstanding time to speak with you about your accomplishments, what you mean to HBCUs and Hampton University.
Nice. Thank
Hi,
you.
Ruth. I know we saw you in Williamsburg not too long ago in Jamestown, but even that's been too long. We love seeing you here at Hampton, at your and my home by the sea.
Yes.
And really just on behalf of Hamptonians everywhere, I just want to say thanks for your example. Thanks for what we call at Hampton University, the standard of excellence.
Yes.
I don't know anyone who exemplifies that more than you do. And beyond Hampton, what you mean to our historically Black colleges and universities as the absolute symbol of what it means to go to one of our universities and to make it to the very top of your profession.
Yes.
And then to think it started all here. And so it's so easy to forget not just one film or two, but your complete body of work. And going through that walk down memory lane was just so powerful.
Yeah.
And so again, I didn't want to keep you long, but I couldn't miss this opportunity.
Absolutely.
On behalf of Hampton University to say just how proud we are of you, your body of work, and we still, with you, have a long way to go. We look for more and more and more films. So again, thank you from Hampton University.
Oh, thank you, President Williams. I appreciate that. Hampton is always in my heart and will, is cemented. And it is where I got my start right there at Armstrong Hall. And, I got the key to the kingdom. When someone asked me to do the costumes for one of the plays, it started there and it never stopped, hasn't stopped since. It's great.
Yes. Ms. Carter, President Williams and Hampton, our division of the liberal arts, our Dean Malone, Khalan, now we have a BA in film program here at Hampton. We're one of the first HBCUs to actually have a BA in film program where students can now learn all the nuances of filmmaking, all of its history, and get a BA in film, which is a testament to the Hampton University leadership, unequivocally. But I want to first thank some people here. Warner Brothers helped put us together. Proximity Media, they also had a great hand in this as well. Miss Monique Johnson Lewis, a melanated agency. A lot of people really put a lot of time to make sure that this came together, Miss Carter, and I'm eternally grateful. I wanted to, I was thinking about Miss Carter before I came onto this webinar with you, and I was saying, as a filmmaker and as a professor and historian, what films that I kind of noticed that costume design was like a real major part of the filmmaking process. And I thought back to my early years, and I remember The Wizard of Oz, that was one, the original one. The Sound of Music, that was another big one for me as a kid. And this one you might laugh at was called Willy Wonka.
The Chocolate Factory.
The
was
original one,
favorite.
With Gene Wilder. That was like, wow for me. Now, as far as the black casts go, I would say The Wiz, that was big for me.
Right.
A Soldier Story. I love that film. And you're Malcolm X, because the way you had the grand landscape of how the design was, especially that scene when Joe Louis They were celebrating Joe Lewis's win in the
Yeah,
street,
his win. Yeah,
and also the
everybody
ballroom
was.
scene that you did. I was like, how did she get all those costumes to fit and people dancing? Nobody's arms are coming out of their shirts and stuff like that. But that just goes to show you that, in my estimation, costume design is underrated. And I think that your success has brought it to another level of respect, because people know now, like, your historic wins make people understand that costume design really is a fabric of the filmmaking process that cannot be overlooked. Your attention to detail, history, your design is actually a story within itself, in my opinion. A lot of films that you've made, I can see the story within your story.
Oh, good. That's what we aim for.
Absolutely. So I want to, get into some of these questions, but I want to first say, this film Sinners that you worked on,
Yeah.
this visionary horror film by outstanding director, writer Ryan Coogler. Now, I saw the film in a private screening, right? I'm watching the film, this horror film on this big screen. I started grabbing my chest to hold onto my cross.
Oh,
I was throwing
no.
holy water at the screen. I went home and threw garlic around the house so the vampires wouldn't get me. But it really was a very powerful horror film that also gives a history lesson, in my
Yes.
opinion, to African folklore, mysticism, mystery. It really does give a whole new perspective of horror within a perspective of those who were marginalized at that time period of 1932 when that film took place. Did that make sense or not?
Yeah, yeah. It's like a multi-layered story.
Yes.
It's people who were disenfranchised, who
Yes.
did no vote, had no money that
No.
was theirs, had no rights, had barren land, worked
Yes.
for other people, and hardly came home with anything.
Yes.
So it's a metaphorical story about the idea of making something out of nothing,
Yes.
then trying to protect your own and trying to, protect yourself from the
Yes.
outside forces, so it's not just a horror film, it's
No.
also like a historic film, and it's also a very modern take on the genre, and how, it can just be brought into many different conversations about what the subtext and the meaning is all about. And
Absolutely.
you see yourself in Sinners, that's why it's so scary, because, what would you do in this
I
circumstance?
agree 100%.
So it was really great working on it. And Ryan's vision is big, it's huge. It's so big, it allows others to come in and feed it and
Yes.
nurture it and massage it and be creative within it. And he embraces that, he gives you the story
Yes,
in
ma'am.
which you can be creative. And we did just that. There's, like you said, you could see the costume story. And so the stripe,
Yes.
the struggle, the rips on the shoulders, the patches, the sweat, all of that is like another character in this film, because, it wouldn't live without it, because that's
No.
who they were. They were workers. And so it was really tough. We shot it really quickly,
Wow.
and so we had to rely on, Ryan's uber focus, not only Ryan, but Zenzi, his wife, producer, and Sev,
Yes.
and Rebecca, everybody, we were huddled, to make this film. We were, yeah, we were throwing into the end zone.
You hit
So
it. You hit it.
yeah. So I love working with Ryan. It's my third picture with him.
Wow.
Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, and now Sinners. So, I understand how he works. I understand how he communicates,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
he understands me too, So I've been in the game a long
Yes,
time,
you have.
This doesn't happen overnight. Being a costume designer is a tough job, and
Yes.
times, you're not, standing on set, being a costume designer. You're back in the trenches,
I can
making
imagine.
sure things are right. And I like to think that, the cast enjoys the process, and we're a part of that process for them.
Yes,
And once they enjoy getting in costume, they can actually kind of explore even deeper who their character is. And
I
so
agree.
I do go to set and I'm standing with them. I'm proud. I fall in love with their costume.
Yes, you
And then
should.
I see their character come to life, and they understand their costume and I understand it. And it just makes the performance and makes the picture that much better. I mean, Autumn, her cinematography, we did Wakanda
Yes,
Forever as well. And the way she lights, you can bring in detail because we're going to see it. And we may not see it like in a big, bright way. We'll see it in an emotional way.
that's
And
exactly right.
that's what, the storytelling really feeds on, how it makes you feel.
Yes, it does. Miss Carter, you made me thinking for a second there about some questions I had. And
Okay.
here's one that I was going to ask you. So you mentioned that you worked with Spike Lee, because Malcolm X's, all those films are brilliant.
Thank
You
you.
worked with the late great John Singleton,
Yes.
and you've
My
also worked with
buddy.
Ryan Coogler. Is there
Yes.
anything that each director did differently, or did they have their own unique trait working with you as a cinematographer? Because they all really carve their own lane of greatness in film.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Esther O was my good friend, and I remember she did
Oh,
a film with me
yes.
called Train Ride right after she did Rosewood. So she came from Rosewood, and she talked about, oh, this great film we did with John and John Voight and Don Cheadle and Ving Rhames. And I was sitting there like, sponging this up. So I was wondering, like, did each of those filmmakers that was such on a pantheon of great black cinema luminaries, each one
Yeah.
had their own style with you that they worked with?
They all had their own style, but one thing that was common was they all wanted to tell authentic stories about Black culture. I
Yes,
did Malcolm X, I did Rosewood, they all wanted to tell authentic stories. And I'm very fortunate to have been started with Spike Lee, and Spike really taught me about the passion behind it. Like, you don't have to do things the Hollywood way. You can do things your own way,
I
and
agree.
you're bringing your own artistry and nobody's going to stop you. So
Yes,
that transcended to John Singleton, who was an admirer of Spike Lee. And John told the story of Baby Boy and growing up in South Central, and then
yes,
Rosewood, and, just the story of a town, a Black town, so many of them that were burned down. So here is like the cultural narrative again that needs to be authentic and
yes,
real. And so that training I got from Spike transcended into working with John Singleton and
yes,
bringing they wanted some of that Spike Lee
yeah, yes,
fairy
yes.
dust. And then here I go with Ryan Coogler, who is also interested in telling the story of the African diaspora, the Black
Yes,
diaspora. And we do Black Panther, and he tells me he admired Spike Lee's films
I can
during
imagine.
film school. And then I realized I had something to offer these young filmmakers. They knew I could build a world. They knew
Yes, you
how
did.
knew how to craft a story. And that's what I love the most, more than what some, do with fashion and film, and you get an ensemble cast
That's
and
exactly
everybody
right.
looks great. I'm more of a storyteller, and the
Yes,
three of them are too. And that's
yes,
makes them the same, but their approach is very different. They all want my ideas, they all want my input. They all want to see what sketches I have or
yes.
how I explain the costume. I've had a great relationship with the cast and every single one of them. Tyrese is still one of my buddies, from
Yes,
Baby Boy.
yes,
And Denzel, and how intense he was as Malcolm X. I had to go on that journey with him and make sure that the emotional level of the costume matched his intensity. So here we go, and we're in Sinners, and we're telling a horror story, which I have never done before. So it was also me layering all of these layers into
yes,
Sinners. The layers is, I feel like, really what gives the film so much richness. Not only is it 1931, how do these people survive? How do
Yes.
they look? How do they immerse? You know, we looked at Indora Wheatley, Welty, we looked at photographers of the time. We looked at how people lived. You see in the town in centers, people are walking by there barefoot.
Yes.
No, we tried really hard to just bring the realness and the rawness to the
You
to the
did.
screen. So that way, when you layer on top of that the subtext, and you know, there were Chinese Americans in the South that were running stores, and they had a strong Christian base. That's why you see a cross on the neck. But also, you know, when you think of horror films, you think of this, the whole layering of
Yes.
voodoo, where you
Yeah.
see Annie and her beads, and then you get a cross, and then you
Yes.
see African warriors in the surreal scene. The surrealist scene was written by Ryan, and it blew us away from the
It was
very
awesome.
the
It was
script.
awesome.
Reading
The whole
about it
thing is
once,
genius.
thank you.
Yeah,
And
and Miss
what
Carter,
reading about it, we just saw it, you
I
know,
can
we
see it.
saw it.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Miss Carter, there's no way to underrate the genius that you've shown on this film, and any film that you can, amongst the films that you've made. To
Hmm.
miss it, you miss a lot. I was going to ask you a question about, I've never seen a film
Hmm.
with an actor playing two roles.
Yeah.
So Michael B. Jordan plays these twin brothers,
Hmm.
and you can't tell, if I would not have known who Michael B. Jordan was, the great actor, I'd have thought he had two brothers, like they were twins, and they just happened to be in the same movie. But how did you tailor make the costume design so they were so different? Because the way you dressed them, I could tell they had two different personalities. And then
Yeah, they did.
Miss Hailee Steinfeld was like this other character, that the third character that comes in and changes the story. But how did you plan such intricateness for each character to make them
Yeah.
so indelible in the film?
Yeah, well, I get some of the ideas come from Ryan about what he wants, what he sees. He has a vision too. And so the first thing he said to me was, I want Smoke to be in blue and I want Stack to be in red. I want Smoke in a blue suit and I want Stack in a red suit. And I thought to myself, how am I gonna get a red
I
suit
can
from the
imagine.
1920s? And so, you know, we went on that journey. Then I started hearing, you know, more talk about what their action would be. You know, Smoke hides different kinds of weapons under his coat. So he's got to have a bigger coat on
Wow.
to hide all those weapons. And then Stack is like a pimp. He's flamboyant, you know,
Yes.
he's smiling all the time. He's trying to charm you, but you know, he has all of the accoutrements, you know, and
Yes.
so it was going on the journey about telling the character story. And then we have the pink, that softness, you know,
Yes.
on Haley Stanfield's character,
Yes.
because we wanted her to look vulnerable. She had nothing on her neck. She was vulnerable. The color was very
Yes.
light and delicate. When she walks out there to the vampires, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah,
she's
that was wild.
yeah, so we made sure that her palette was just from outside
Yes.
what everybody else was wearing. And you know, she also had a story of, you know, marrying some rich white guy and
Yes.
then
Yes.
coming back and, you know, really saying who she really was, but
Yes.
you know, everything about her just wasn't that. So that's how you go on that journey. I mean, Wunmi, her character as Annie was wonderful. You know, we grow up in neighborhoods and, you know, whether you're in New York and you're hearing about Santeria and you're going to get the
Yes.
beads from the store and you see how people carry their beads under their
Yes.
shirt, you know, and you can't really touch them because they pray with them and they're special. That's what we were going for
It
with
was there.
Annie's
It was there.
character. And we wanted people to see that and, you know, feel that. And that's what makes the journey really special for the
It
actor,
does.
that you're thinking that far outside the box.
Yes. You know, Miss Carter, I was thinking about the work you did and Mr. Coogler did on the film. And I went back, I was like, you know what? Let me think of some Black vampire films I've seen in my day,
Yeah,
right? So
Vampire in
yeah,
Brooklyn,
well, that one, I thought about Blackula, right?
Blackula.
1972, right? My man William
Ooh.
Crane. And then I thought about another one that was really good. Now, this one was called Ganja and Hess.
Oh yeah, Ganja and Hess.
My man Bill Gunn, and that was one of the greatest films ever made, and it was underrated because it was. But Dwayne Jones in that film from Night of the Living Dead, and then I got another one for you that was great too, Miss Carter. I'm sure you know. It's not a typical horror film, but the vampire comes into the house. It's called To Sleep with Anger with Danny Glover.
To Sleep with Anger. Ooh, yeah,
that's a great film.
Good one.
And Danny,
and watch it over the weekend.
Let me tell you what's wild about that movie, right? That's how you know it's from the Black perspective. So Danny Glover comes to the house. The late great Mary Alice and the late Paul Butler is their home, and you can tell he's up to no good because right when he comes in the house, a little boy touches his foot with a broom, and he grabs the broom and he starts spitting on. He says, "Never touch a person's foot with a broom," and he starts throwing salt over his shoulder. And I was like, "Oh." Danny Glover's on his A game. That Charles Burnett made that film, but that was off the chain.
Yeah.
And I was saying, do you think that horror is a way that Black filmmakers often use that template to talk about social and racial discrepancies?
Oh yeah, I think that it's definitely a conduit for, dealing with, metaphorical ideas and storylines. I mean, we're kind of living in a horror story, if you really kind of look at the, present state of affairs, we could
Yes,
a horror story about where we are right now.
Preach.
When when you think about, just like, violence in neighborhoods and how, we have to protect ourselves. We have to be, a part of, a part of like the happy side of life, but also a part of the protective side of life where you walk to the store at night, it's kind of scary.
It is.
So, maybe there are people that are kind of scary. I mean, there's like so many metaphors that can be used to tell the story through a horror genre,
Yes.
I think it's just kind of like a natural tool to use within writing and storytelling. So I think that's what makes it so much fun too. Think to yourself, what would I do? Don't go through that door.
No.
Don't put your eye up to that hole.
No, not at all.
You're saying that because you can feel it. And yeah, and so there's a lot of relatability within that, scary genre.
I see a couple of students have some questions in here that I'm gonna get to in a minute before we let you go, Ms. I want to tell you though, before a couple of questions. Well, it wasn't a statement.
Okay.
That one scene that was an amalgamation of the different cultures in that juke joint. So you have Indian people dancing.
Yeah.
There were Asians dancing. You see the hip hop on the turntables.
Yeah.
You see blues, and like there's every possible race and culture in that one little. It's a Scorsese type shot. The way the way it winds through the audience
around the room. Yeah.
I've never seen that before, especially when you're bringing in all these different cultures into one. How was that idea? How did that come about? Because you did a lot of great design in that scene.
It was written in the scripts. Ryan Coogler wrote it in the script, and as I said, when we read it in the script, we were like, "Oh my God, did you read that part?
Wow,
amazing!" So when you get a piece of material that you get to work on, that's high art.
Yes.
You want to bring it. And so we were very much involved with, sharing images. Once I started getting this, the Senegalese Zalam players fitting.
That was awesome.
We put we put everything on a board. I brought the boards to set for hair and makeup to take a look at them, and everybody band together to make those images come to life because, we all read things differently. So we needed the visual storytelling, like laying out in front of us as we created these moments. I mean, the Turkana girl, she's dancing with all of her beads and shells on. It was magical for us to even make it. We had the poro dancer with the face, and it also was kind of scary, kind of kind of eerie, but it also told you like this guy playing this guitar, Sammy's the blues is a magical transformational musical form that influenced, it was influenced from the past, it was brought in from the past, where these sounds and these musical notes, you know, hearken to our past, but
Yes.
also it influenced all through the 80s, the 90s, all
Yes,
the
it
way
did.
through. It really is an origin story of music.
Yes. Ms. Carter, before I take some questions, I want to say something interesting about why it's so important to support films like Sinners and a lot of conscious Black cinema. In
Yeah,
1992, when I saw him, I never forget, I went to see Malcolm X.
yeah,
Me and a young lady I took to see the movie. We go to the
yeah.
box office. I go to the ticket stand, and they
Okay.
gave me a ticket for Home Alone 2.
Oh, okay.
And I realized we as Black consumers of cinema have to protect our banner films because if we don't check our ticket stubs,
Oh, yeah, they'll give the credit to another film. I
yes,
remember when they were doing that.
they still do it.
Oh, you're
So a lot
kidding
of
me.
times, I think it's important for people to make sure they buy their tickets online ahead of time. Or if you do buy at the box
Yeah,
office, make sure that the ticket says Sinners or whatever the film is, because the box office goes to what is on that ticket.
that's right.
And I
That's
think
right.
that
You got to
it's
keep an
important for
eye.
us to support your work. The work
Mm-hmm.
that goes into these films is inordinate. And if you
Absolutely.
knew how much work went into these films, you would never
Mm-hmm.
want to bootleg these films off the street and buy them from the corner store, your boy on the corner, or look at the ticket stub and give another film the support. And also, be conscious of the reviews that you read, because everybody without understand the richness of these films.
Yeah. Everybody's not going to get it.
They're not going to get
Not
it,
for
but
everybody.
but those that are conscious will get it. Now I'm gonna go into here, Miss Carter. Hope I can get this right. Um, I have one question in here, Miss Carter. It says, "How did you get your start?"
Hmm. It's a long time ago. At Hampton.
Yeah, yes,
Well, I was a special education major at Hampton. I always was involved in theater, even as a kid. My mom would put me in programs, theater programs. And so once I got to Hampton, I decided that I didn't want to study special education as much as I wanted to study theater arts. So I
yes.
switched my major. And I was acting and I was in a bunch of plays at Hampton. And one time I didn't make the play, and the professor who was directing asked me if I wanted to do the costumes. And I was like, all right. And
That's
I
funny.
got in there and I realized I could play all the characters as the costume designer. I
That's
could
fantastic.
create their arcs and their storylines. And I just loved it from that point on.
I love it. I love it. Here's another one. Do your costumes connect with color theory in mind?
Yes, yes, always. They always have. From the very beginning, I learned color theory, the relationships between colors, as you have on a color wheel, and you study how those relationships, how colors work together side by side, the contrast of color. And in like a film like Black Panther, we had definitely a color palette for all of the tribes. The River Tribe was green, the
Yes.
Dora was red. And even within Sinners, you know, we had Smoke and Stack in red and blue. And then we had Annie wearing her hate blue, which is
I
more
remember that.
teal, turquoisey blue. And so her color story, you know, even though, you know, it was a little more subtle, you could tell that, you know, her colors, the things she was wearing was very intentional. And then I talked about Annie with her light pink and looking kind of outer worldly. She was just like a bunny rabbit walking into the wolves den. So we do color theory, and then within that, you have to have relationships in with color on a
Yes.
frame of a film. There are relationships that you see, and those relationships evoke emotion from the audience. I could talk about that for a long
It's
time.
a hit.
Thank you.
Here's one. Here's another good one. Oh, and R.I.P. to Chadwick Boseman. He was a treasure. I gotta just shout
Oh
him out.
yeah, he was.
He was already amongst the greats. Here's another one
Yeah.
that says, in which ways, Miss Carter, do you work directly with the production designer and set decorator?
Oh, yeah. Well, set decoration is very important. We become besties because we talk about what color the curtains are, what color the walls are going to be, because they decorate after the bones are set. and the production designer and I also have a great relationship. Hannah Beekler, we did Wakanda Forever, we did Black Panther, we did Sinners. So we have a family, we've started a whole family, and we check in and we check in. What are you doing? What are you doing? And it's not like all one, it's not just like one painting that they share with you. It's something that you share ongoing
Yes.
every day. You run into each other because you're down there together in whatever city you are in, and you're working towards this end, and I gotta show you this, I'm doing that. Let me show you on my phone what I'm doing right here, because we're always working on different timelines. So we share constantly.
I love it. How about this one, Ms. Carter? What was the most difficult part of your job for Sinners? Was it developing the image for the characters, or are there any other challenges that you did not expect?
Woo, we didn't expect them alligators out there in the bayou.
Oh
I
my
know
God, Lord have mercy.
we didn't expect all them mosquitoes to be eating us alive. I had them out there in tank tops and dresses, and there was thousands of mosquitoes.
No way.
But in all seriousness, you know, as a professional, the blood. The blood was the difficult thing, because even the background had to, everybody you see on that screen
Yes.
had 2 or 3 backups of that same costume. We had to build costumes for this movie. We had to order multiple overalls for Cornbreads and his shirt. We had to have multiples. We shot out of order. So one day they're
Yeah.
bloody, the next day they're not. So it was the blood that was the biggest challenge.
I could imagine. Omar Benson Miller, he was great too, with Miles Caton.
Oh yeah, Omar.
Oh my God. When designing costumes for a film, how do you decide when you will source pieces that are already existing versus craft from scratch?
You know, we have a saying in wardrobe, one is none. And I usually take the antiques and I study them. So I had real costumes from the 1920s.
Yes.
And I studied how they were aged. I studied patches. I studied how they sewed, how they did the hand sewing on a patch. And I realized that when people patch up something, this is how you're going to tell the difference between a fake patch and a real patch. Because a real patch tries to get as close to the color as possible, because we don't want to draw attention to the fact that it's a patch.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
so
yes.
most of the time when I saw these overalls or these jeans that were patched up from way back in 1920s, it was a denim that matched it, and you could, you know, see the outline of the hole, but this was a time of hand-me-downs. This was a time of wash and repair.
Yes.
People didn't have a whole slew of things to wear. You got a hand-me-down that was in decent shape and had a little tear in it. You sewed it up and handed it down to your little sister or your little brother, and they rolled the bottoms of the hems up, because they had to grow into it sometime. And
Yes.
that's what I wanted to explore with Sinners as well, that there were these concepts that we don't exercise that anymore, you know, because, you know, we're a different way of life. But then that was the way of life, and examining the old way of life was thrilling.
Yes. You got some fans on here, Miss Carter. One woman says on here, she says that you are incredible. How do you begin after you read a script to download the imagery in your mind from it?
Well, it's a step-by-step process. It doesn't happen like boom. You gotta figure out what you saw in the script. You gotta write it down. You gotta understand what you're reading. You gotta talk to the director. You gotta
Yes.
talk to people. And then as you kind of, you know, think about it in color, you know, well, did this make me happy? Did this make me feel dark? Was it a spooky time? Was it a bright time? And then you go,
Yes.
oh, that's the colors that would be involved in a atmosphere like that. So it's one little tiny baby step at a time. And then before you know it, you've got a full-blown canvas.
Yes. How about this one? What was the costume in the film that you connected to the most? Does that make sense at all?
What was the costume that I
Yeah.
connected to? How Stella got a groove bag,
All
because
right, that's a hit.
professional.
That was a hit movie. I remember that very well. Tay Diggs.
She went to Jamaica. I went to Jamaica.
Yes.
a professional. I was a professional.
Yes,
So
Lynn
when
Turman, I'm sure.
Angela Bassett played How Stella Got Her Groove Back, I was like,
Yes.
that's my bestie right there.
You know, my friend was in that film. Suzanne Douglas was my buddy. She was in my
Oh,
film, Change the Game. That was my
yeah.
buddy. Yeah, she passed.
Bless her heart. Rest in peace.
How about this one, Miss Carter? Did you do any horror research to design anything in centers?
Did I do any horror
Yeah,
research?
any research about horror, or it says anything with historical horror in this question to inspire your choices for the costumes at all?
Well, horror, historic, blood and guts and there probably was like, we probably looked at some horror things, but I can't think of anything specifically to
Got
answer
it.
that.
How about this one? Um, this is the tough one, Miss Carter. What was your most favorite film to do your design on for costume design? Any favorite film that
I
amongst
got
the
a few,
pantheon?
it changes from day to day, but Black Panther is definitely the
Oh
first
yeah,
one, super favorite. Wakanda Forever with going into the Mayans became a favorite.
yes,
Malcolm X, doing the zoot suits. You talked about the dance hall scenes earlier. I just love that time. And, every time I do something, I'm having an experience too. So when I did Malcolm X, I was 32 years old. So
wow,
was that was an experience for a 32-year-old. When I did Black Panther, I had never done a superhero film before. So I had Dora Milaje and I had all of this stuff. So
yes,
that was an experience for me during that time in my life. And Sinners as well. I'd never done horror before, never had to put all that blood all over my costumes.
yes.
For me as now, somebody who has 35 years experience, I'm still experiencing new things. And
You're
so,
knocking it out. You're knocking
yeah,
it out.
thank
Two more,
you.
two more small ones here. What is the difference between making costumes for feature films and theater?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's aesthetic distance, right? On theater, when you're sitting in the audience and you're looking all of that way on stage, you got to make things bigger than life. In movies, things are right up close. Things are blown up 400%. Here we got IMAX. IMAX has got it even bigger. So you want to bring in the detail. You want to bring in as much detail as you can because we will see it all.
Wow. Yo, you got a friend of yours, Ralph Scott. He's working on
Yeah,
Mama
Ralph
Scott. He's giving you a
Scott,
shout out
yeah.
on here. My man, Ralph Scott.
Shout out to Ralph. What's up,
Yeah,
my
he's a
friend?
visionary. Somebody said on here, one more before I let you go. It says on here, what are the biggest lessons you have learned that have impacted how you approach your craft today?
Well, I learned to listen.
Yeah, I
Um,
like that.
I learned to listen and be a great listener and let people be big and, you know, pace the floor and be patient and listen. And
Yes,
I get more out of listening than I do out of sometimes talking.
yes,
So that's a big overarching thing is about listening to the visionary because they're guiding the ship. When I'm gone, they still got that art piece, and you want them
yes.
to do you want them to be inspired by what you brought to the table. So
I
the
agree, Miss
only
Carter.
way you can do that is to listen to what they are envisioning.
Yeah, this last one, Miss Carter. Did anybody help train you for what you've done? Like, was there a specific person that got
Mm-hmm.
like I know you said Hampton and
Yeah,
you
my mentors at Hampton were
was there
definitely.
anybody like specifically that studied this or watched me do this or
Well,
maybe
when I
mentored
first
you?
worked for Spike, he was my first mentor because I'd only been doing theater. And then I did my first film with him. So he took me shopping, it's all in my little book, The Art of Ruthie Carter. Uh,
Yes,
but I talk about going shopping with Spike. He and I went and got Rosie Perez's names on her little earrings, her character name.
yes,
And he's the one who told me, you got to have more than one. We're going to do a stunt. He's the one who really drive to home, like these are what we need to actually be successful with making the film. So I think I would say in film, Spike Lee was my first mentor. And yeah, yeah.
it's fantastic.
I gotta, shout out to Spike.
Yes, you do. Miss Carter, so if someone wants to see what you're doing next, let's say somebody's like, I got to get a resume to Miss Carter. I'm going to fall out my chair. How would somebody know how to find you somehow and just say, can you please look at my my demo. Coogler Rap would say my demo. But is there a way for somebody to like, find out what you're doing next, or just keep a beeline on what
Follow me
you're
on
doing?
Instagram.
Yeah, good
I
idea.
have a YouTube channel, and I keep up my Instagram.
Yeah, you
And
do.
yeah, and if you follow me and stuff, you can message me and see what's up. I'm in London now, working with
Wow.
Michael B. Jordan. He's directing the Thomas Crown Affair, and he's also starring in it, doing two roles again.
Damn,
But
tell them congrats
not
for
playing
everybody
a
here.
twin,
That's
huh?
hot. That's hot.
Yeah, yeah.
Ms. Carter, I'm gonna say before we go, you remind me of someone the way you give back to, and you even this webinar where people can get all this great information. I tell people all the time, when you get to the top of any profession and the elevator goes up, send it back down so others can come up with you. Don't sit up somewhere at the top where people helped you on your journey and not let others also benefit from going down the elevator and getting up to where you are, because you'll be blessed for those efforts. And I think that
100%.
the people that are before us, Spencer Williams, Oscar Micheaux, Spike Lee,
Yeah.
they're all proud of what you've achieved. And I think also friends of mine, the late, great Lou Gossett Jr. and Tony Todd, that were in JD's Revenge, which is a horror film in the 70s.
Ooh, JD's
Yeah,
Revenge.
that's my
He's
man.
taking it back.
And Candyman, Candyman was
Oh.
a really great horror film where Tony Todd carved out a lane that nobody could have carved out but him. And I think what you've done for HBCUs, for Hampton, for people that just want to dream big and be Ruth E. Carter, your efforts will always be blessed because you've always remained your consciousness to your craft.
Oh, thank you.
So I just want to thank you for your time and thank Warner Brothers and Proximity Media and Miss Monique Johnson Lewis, everybody who helped put this together. It really was enlightening. And please go see Sinners on opening weekend.
Yeah, it opens tomorrow.
Yeah, don't wait till a month and let the film be number one at the box office for this weekend.
Yes,
So
go have some fun.
yeah,
Go see Horror Flick.
pass by the bootlegger, right? Forget the bootlegger. Tell them no.
Bootlegger's out of business. Everybody has a link now. He's
Oh,
out
I
of
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Let's put the link. Let's put the link out of business too. Let's put them out of business too. Well, Ms. Carter, we sure appreciate your time. We appreciate you, and best of luck with the film. It's a classic, an instant classic for all races to appreciate.
Yay, awesome. Thank you so much. It was nice being here. And thank you everybody for staying on this webinar. It's been
And support
great.
HBCUs, right, Ms. Carter?
Yeah,
support the
that's
HBCUs.
Right, that's right. Hampton, HU,
Hampton.
still HU.
Sinners.